In 1930, at the Allahabad session of the Muslim League, with its president Sharik Bal advocating for a separate country for Muslims, the Nizam of Hyderabad, Osman Ali, also became involved. He began to dream of including the Hyderabad state in that imagined Islamic nation as well. But with Hindus making up more than 50% of the state's population, this was not possible. That is why the Nizam began to abuse his power and started a conspiracy to convert Hindus on a large scale in order to increase the Muslim population. Soon, at the Nizam's signal, the Kaksa party, Nizam's army, Ittihadul organization, and the religious goons of Dinda Siddiqui began to wreak havoc in the Hyderabad state. The state's government officials were leaving no stone unturned in imposing Islam on the Hindu population of the state. The old names of many cities and villages were changed to Islamic names. Akholi became Zahirabad, Bidar was renamed Muhammadabad, and Darashif was changed to Osmanabad. The Maulvis who thrived on the Nizam's patronage began misleading Hindu Dalits, converting them to another faith and inciting them to rebel against the Hindus themselves. Meanwhile, the Nizam's Razakars were looting villages. They were committing atrocities against Hindu women and girls. Thousands of Hindu children were forcibly circumcised, and those deemed of no use were killed. To cover up the atrocities being committed in the name of religion in the state, the Nizam would donate money to some Hindu temples, and in return, the greedy priests of those temples would sing praises of the Nizam's generosity. Despite being an overwhelming 85% of the population, the Hindus of Hyderabad state were not united, and because of this, the Muslims, who made up only 10% of the population, were able to freely and openly oppress them. If any Hindu dared to protest, they would be imprisoned on false charges and subjected to inhuman torture. And the Nizam was carrying out all these atrocities. At the same time, there was no hope of any help from Gandhi, who was cloaked in the garb of secularism. All in all, only two paths remained for the Hindus: either sacrifice their lives for their faith or bow their heads and abandon their religion. In such an atmosphere of utter despair and oppression in Hyderabad, the Arya Samaj emerged in the state. In no time, Arya Samaj temples were established at more than 200 locations across the state. Arya Samaj gave strength to the Hindus and inspired them not to bow down before the atrocities of the Nizam. Not only that, but the preachers of Arya Samaj also launched a campaign to bring back those Hindus who, having succumbed to the Nizam's oppression and temptations, had abandoned their faith. Seeing all this, the Nizam and his henchmen realized very well that as long as Arya Samaj existed, the Islamization of Hyderabad state would not be possible. To remove Arya Samaj from his path, the Nizam began imposing various restrictions on the organization. Arya Samaj schools and temples were demolished. The Arya Samaj was banned from propagating religion and holding processions or gatherings. Even the entry of Arya Samaj missionaries from outside the state was prohibited. Without permission, even the weekly satsangs in Arya Samaj temples were banned. The Nizam ordered that his own flag be hoisted in place of the Arya Samaj's Om flag. Not only that, but many Arya Samaj activists were falsely implicated in criminal cases and thrown into jail. With the brutal murder of Arya Samaj activist Ved Prakash by Muslims in Gunjoti, a series of sacrifices by Arya Samaj activists began in the Hyderabad state. However, despite all this, the Arya Samaj stood its ground. The Arya Samaj tried to resolve the issue through dialogue, and assurances were also given by the Nizam to put an end to the atrocities. But the Nizam's atrocities, fueled by religious fanaticism, did not stop. the shamelessness and cunning displayed by the Nizam began to spark outrage within the nationwide organization of Arya Samaj. To formulate a further strategy on this issue, the Arya Samaj convened the Arya Mahasammelan in Sholapur, where the highest body of the Arya Samaj, the Sarvadeshik Arya Pratinidhi Sabha, seeing that no solution was emerging through dialogue, announced a satyagraha against the Hyderabad state. As soon as the satyagraha was announced, Arya Samaj activists from all over the country rushed to reach Hyderabad state, and reports began to come in of thousands of satyagrahis arriving in Hyderabad. On January 31st, 1939, Mahatma Narayan Swamiji announced the commencement of the satyagraha. In accordance with the principles of satyagraha, Swamiji sent a telegram to inform the Subadar of Gulbarga about this. This announcement created a stir in the state, and preparations to stop the satyagraha began to be made hastily. At the appointed time, when Swamiji arrived in Gulbarga with the first group of satyagrahis, the state officials were already present there with their soldiers. The official ordered Swamiji to leave the state, but Swamiji and his companions flatly refused. After this, all the protesters were arrested, and Swamiji, along with the other satyagrahis, was prosecuted in the state court and sentenced to 11 years of rigorous imprisonment. After this sequence of events, the movement seemed to catch fire.
Not one, not 24, but millions. There is a crowd at the treasury, not just 24, but millions. The crowd is gathered, ready to sacrifice themselves, moving forward, surging ahead. The crowd is gathered, ready to sacrifice themselves, moving forward, surging ahead, and will fill the ranks. The jails are filled, they belong to the brave Dayanand. The jails are filled, they belong to the brave Dayanand. The whole world knows us, we are of the brave Dayanand. The whole world knows we are of the brave Dayanand. The entire clan Chankaran.
Under the leadership of Sharda, Kushal Chand Kursand, Pandit Durendra, Pandit Ved, Vrat, Mahashai Krishna, and Pandit Gyanendra, after the first group, thousands of Arya Samaj activists reached the Hyderabad state in 16 successive batches, and in the state's courts, one-sided trials were conducted against them. They were sentenced. But now, in the face of the overwhelming number of satyagrahis, the state's jails were becoming too small, and there was no space left to accommodate new prisoners. After this, temporary jails had to be set up to house the Arya Satyagrahis. When the satyagraha was first announced, the Nizam had dismissed it as an empty threat. He thought that even if the satyagraha did begin, it would be crushed. But not only did the satyagraha begin, it shook the very foundations of the Hyderabad state. Seeing his plan to Islamize the state being disrupted, the Nizam was infuriated. In the districts, satyagrahis began to be subjected to inhuman torture. They began to be beaten without reason and forced to do hard labor. Due to being given poor food and water, many satyagrahis fell ill. But the worst was when goons from the Ittihadul organization would enter the jails. Right in front of the police, they would brutally beat the satyagrahis. But the more tactics the Nizam used to crush the movement, the more he ended up fueling the movement further. Amidst news of atrocities and sacrifices, the 8th group set out for Hyderabad under the leadership of Pandit Vinayak Vidyalanka. The strong agitation by the first 7 groups already imprisoned had loosened the grip of the Hyderabad state, and now the news of the arrival of the 8th group left the Nizam in a state of panic. The gravity of the situation can be gauged from the fact that the staunch Islamic newspaper of the state, Waqt, predicted in its July 7, 1939 issue that there would be no need for the 8th group to launch a satyagraha, as the Nizam's government would surrender to the Arya Samaj even before that. Due to the intense movement and pressure from the Arya Samaj, the Nizam finally surrendered on July 17, 1939. He made an official announcement to stop the persecution of Hindus and to lift all restrictions on the Arya Samaj. This victory was the result of the supreme sacrifices and unwavering ideological commitment of Maharshi Dayanand's warriors in defense of Sanatan Dharma, which compelled the powerful Hyderabad state to surrender without a fight. Even before the movement began, more than 10 Arya Samaj activists had already sacrificed their lives for the propagation of religion. During the course of the movement, due to reasons such as forcing the satyagrahis to do hard labor in prisons, beating and assaulting them, denying medical treatment to the sick and those injured from beatings, and providing poor quality food and water, 25 more Arya warriors sacrificed their lives. The number of such Arya warriors runs into the thousands, whose bodies bore the marks of the inhuman atrocities committed by the Hyderabad state until their dying breath. In 1947, the country did gain independence, but the Nizam of Hyderabad was not ready to give up showing his true colors. 9 years after the movement, when the Hyderabad state was merged into the Republic of India, the then Home Minister of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, said that if the Arya Samaj had not laid such groundwork beforehand, the police action in Hyderabad could not have succeeded in just 3 days. After independence, the government of India honored all the participants of the Hyderabad movement by granting them the status of freedom fighters.
The resonant sound of the ancient millstones echoes deeply throughout the narrow alleys. The persistent sound of the grinding millstones echoes clearly in all the surrounding alleys. We will joyfully sing and dance with great enthusiasm to the rhythmic clanking of the heavy shackles. Yes, we will sing and dance with immense joy to the persistent clanking of the shackles. These are truly the powerful songs of freedom, the inspiring songs of the brave and courageous Dayanand. These are indeed the glorious songs of freedom, celebrating the valiant Dayanand. The entire world knows us well for the legendary Dayanand. Yes, the whole wide world truly knows us and recognizes us for the remarkable Dayanand.